For one night only, Whiskey with a Mate is back, and that's because a friend of mine is also just back from Israel with a bottle of whiskey that's just won, would you believe, a bottle of of Israeli whiskey, top prize at the World Whiskey Awards. Of course I had to have that. But that's not actually the whole story. And before we get to that, let me tell you why. My friend is Andrew Landeryou. He was married to the very lovely friend of mine, Labor Senator Kimberley Kitching, a friend of many years. And she, of course, was someone, I've said before, I thought gave Labor just what it needed. She was so smart, so well informed. She was someone who believed in our Western civilization and the need to defend it. Well, Kimberley died so suddenly, 16 months ago, of a heart attack, and Andrew kind of vanished from the public space, and this is the first time it's been on TV as far as I know. Since then, Andrew Landeryou, thanks a lot for your time, really appreciate it.
Andrew.
I've been asked several times in the year and a bit, how are you going? By people that don't even know you, how are you going?
I'm doing okay. I think day to day, so professionally, I'm showing up and doing what I need to do, but obviously...
Going through the motions?
Yes. And obviously, you know, I feel like the mayor of Hiroshima sometimes.
It's a hell of a shock.
Yeah.
I mean, Kimberley was so vital, and to have someone so out of your life so fast.
Yes. So that's obviously very confronting at lots of levels, not just the sort of practical day-to-day thing and sort of the emptiness of all of that. But also I obviously have to grapple with how I may irrationally feel about it, which is that I should have done a better job of protecting her. And,
well,
and I know that that's not entirely rational, but...
Well, also, you know, that we had you and Kimberley over for lunch, was it 3 or 4 days before?
That's right, yeah.
And I thought, gosh, she'd lost a lot of weight, but anyway, look. Mate, at the funeral, you seemed in total shock to me. Yes. But what really surprised me and a lot of other people, that you really gave a eulogy that was just so on point, and you didn't miss, you know, because before she died, in fact, even at that lunch, Kimberley had accused Labor's so-called mean girls, including now Foreign Minister Penny Wong, of having bullied her. They denied, of course. But here are you at the funeral.
And of course, there's a lot I could say about the unpleasantness of a cantankerous cabal, not all of them in Parliament, that was aimed at Kimber. And the intensity of it did baffle and hurt her. But I hope it's sufficient to say she deserves so very much better.
Andrew, how do you feel about all that now?
Well, I hope it is sufficient to say she deserved a lot better than that. She was so brilliant and erudite and tough and sensitive at the same time, and I don't think they had a better person ever. So the truth of it was all, as politics is, very complicated, and I've sort of grown up enough to accept that it's a tough business for tough people, and Kimberley was that. She was a warrior. She could stand up for herself, and she did very emphatically. And obviously people focus on negative things, and sometimes I'm guilty of that very much too. But the truth was, almost all of her colleagues, from the top down to varying degrees, were incredibly supportive of her and encouraging of her. So I kind of decided at a certain point that it was important for me to focus on that and remember that and sort of honour that. She had a lot of support. And in fact, the kind of amazing thing now is her supporters, say, in the Victorian branch of the Labor Party, are still there. They still support the values that she, I think, exemplified and articulated incredibly well. And you know, that endures. And so much so that some of them even talked me into running for the ALP National Conference, the ballots of which are in tomorrow, and ALP elections being what they are, I think I probably will get elected.
Serious?
Yeah, so I'll be a National Conference delegate. And
good job.
Going up to Brisbane for that, whenever it is, in August.
Oh, I need to ask you about that in a second.
Yeah.
One last thing before we do move on. Have you learned to forgive the so-called mean girls? Like I say, they all deny bullying. They all, that is Foreign Minister Penny Wong, Finance Minister Katie Gallagher, and someone who then got voted out, Christina Keneally, actually lost her seat. Have you learned to forgive?
Well, I think it's really important, and I realise this is not an answer. I think it's really important that I do forgive everyone. So I have to grapple with that, and I work hard on that and work to focus on positive, good things, and to yeah, I think the most important thing I can do to sort of honour Kimberley's legacy and her memory is to act in the classy way that she acted, and which is not necessarily my first instinct, unfortunately. So that's what I hope to do.
No, you're a bit like me. We'd like to smite the unrighteous.
Yeah, and sometimes that is my inclination. But I think it's important to try and focus on the good thing. And one thing that probably not many people picked up on, and I did because I suppose I was sitting there, which was I went up to hear the condolence motion speeches for Kimberley's passing, and Katie Gallagher got up and spoke beautifully and said that she had occasion to reflect very deeply on her relationship with Kimberley. And I sat there and I listened to those words and I realised that was probably as close to an apology that a public official in that situation could make. And I really, really respected it. And it resonated with me and sort of helped me a bit, sort of not move on, but to try and remember to act in a way consistent with Kimberley's values and
that's
to be disciplined about it.
That's good, because to me that shows that you're healing more than anything else. Let's quickly toast. Kimberley's a huge friend of democracies, particularly Israel. Yes. This is an Israeli whiskey, the world's best whiskey. Let's drink l'chaim to Kimberley before I ask you about these national conference business.
Cheers.
To her.
To Kimber.
Great woman. And
it's a nice whiskey.
That's not a bad whiskey to toast her. So she deserves that.
So Michael Danby and I in Tel Aviv went to the distillery where they make this world's best single malt. And to be honest, I thought it was rather implausible that Tel Aviv would produce such things, given that traditionally its water has been pretty dreadful. But as a proof of how innovative and clever sort of the startup nation is, they've managed. It's only been open for 10 years.
Now, I'm actually running out of time. I've only got a minute and a half, 10 to ask you, but I'm going to. What worries me, the Victorian Labor Party's been taken over by the left. They've got the numbers. They passed the motion demanding that, Palestinian nationhood be recognised immediately. They're also against AUKUS, but they were talked out of doing that. Yep. And now you're going to this, hopefully you're going to this national conference where the left have the numbers for the first time in, 70 years, in August.
Yes.
Are you worried about the direction Labor's taking?
Well, I'm concerned about it, and I suppose that's why I agreed to run as a delegate. And I hope that...
it's scary, mate.
The common sense prevails, and I think you'll find saner heads will prevail on all of that. That's my optimistic belief.
Mate, they had to say, look, you can throw Israel under the bus as long as you don't say we're against AUKUS. I mean, seriously.
And there's talk about that, but there's also talk usually that that a debate on that issue would be sort of avoided and we'll just sort of concede
deal behind the scenes.
And my position is I'm there for the debate if they intend to change the policy in a way that...
Andrew, I'm so glad you felt good enough to come on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're on a journey.
Yeah.
Thank you so much indeed. Cheers to you. Cheers again to Kimberley.